Sony's 2018 press conference is over. Whoa!
Hot take. Well, this is pretty exciting because we've now seen the second major manufacturer of consoles this year show off all the games they've got in store for the next little bit. So we just saw Microsoft yesterday, and now we're looking at Sony, and this was quite a strange conference.
Oh, yeah, breathtaking, if you will. It did start kind of bizarrely, right?
Yeah, in a church.
In a church.
Well, kind of. It was a church.
Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah. So they started off in a church, and they started with a very interesting sort of musical presentation. And as soon as they brought out the instrument and started plucking away, we knew pretty quickly that it was the Last of Us 2.
Oh, I thought it was Rock Band.
Oh, no.
No. Okay, well, still, Last of Us. I mean, there's a couple people out there that might like that game. I don't know.
Yeah. So anyway, we saw quite a bit from The Last of Us 2 because we'd had the game teased previously, but I don't think we'd seen any gameplay up until this point, eh?
Everything we'd really seen was more or less just cutscenes that were pre-rendered or using in-game assets, but they were predestined. Like, you knew what was going to happen before them.
Yep.
So to see what we saw there. Now let's just start off with, there's a dance sequence. They build a little bit of the drama up. Mm-hmm. This is kind of important because other trailers and other game demos we've seen have failed to do any of this.
Right.
Get you interested in the characters and then show you the gameplay. Mm-hmm. So when they actually showed you the gameplay, it was really impactful.
Oh my gosh, it hits you like a ton of bricks. Talk about taking like contrasting sort of feelings, emotions, right?
Violent. It was gory. It like whenever you see violence in a video game, typically you kind of get a little bit removed from it. And in fact, I'm going to say this so much to the point where everything else you saw at the Sony conference afterwards, no matter what kind of punch it was, what kind of game it was, the violence never seemed authentic, but this felt dark. It felt visceral. It felt harsh and gritty and in a way that isn't a comic book sense of that kind of word association. It really felt like you were watching people get murdered on screen, which was insane. Like it was really, really heavy.
It felt quite disturbing. Going from like, I was thinking about the Tomb Raider trailer that we'd seen previously and seeing some of the action there and people were dying and stuff, but it was so like matter of fact, like, oh, whatever, Lara Croft is spinning around and people are being hung and stuff. It was, it was so gamey, like gamified, right?
No, that's what it is.
And it feels so gritty and so like, I don't know, man. There's just
that's it. That is what it is.
It's like you can see the life leaving like their eyes, and it's kind of horrifying.
Yeah,
like, to be bluntly honest.
Like, I mean, I'm all for this line of story. I know a lot of people are looking forward to the sequel, and I know you mentioned actually while we were watching this that the first game was about a specific feel, and the second one's about something else.
Right. The developers came out and said that they were going for a specific feeling for the first Last of Us, and I don't recall exactly what they said. They said it was more about, I think,
loss.
Getting over loss. Thank you, because of what happens in the beginning part of the Last of Us.
For those of you that don't know, the very beginning of Last of Us, we're not going to spoil anything, but just right at the beginning, there is a part of the game that takes place before all the other events that is just the first couple of minutes of up. It destroys you emotionally.
Right.
It puts you in this world and it puts you in this setting and gets you immediately connected with the characters. And damn, man, like they managed to do that with the trailer in the same way.
Yeah, what we didn't get to was that, so loss was a big part of that first game, and the creators came out and basically said that The Last of Us 2 is going to be focusing on anger.
Yeah, right? And that's clear here.
Yeah, it's very clear. So, yeah, like I said, it did seem a little bit disturbing, but at the same time, it's like you get so sucked into this, right?
Yeah.
Like, we couldn't look away from this. During most of this conference, I gotta say, like, just getting the feel of the room during the Sony conference, everyone's leaning in and like mouths are just open the whole time.
Yeah, it really was.
Gosh, what's going on?
I think something I want to mention is with all the other conferences we've seen so far, there's been a lot of games that have had this post-apocalyptic vibe.
Right.
And I'm getting burnt out from it. I don't want to see it anymore. I'm getting sick of it. But The Last of Us was always that outliner because it's not about the world, it's about the characters. And in this trailer, you'll notice that some of the people that are like actually hunting Ellie or Ellie's hunting them, whatever's going on, they actually shout out each other's names. And when they're doing that, that means that these characters are not just randomly generated NPCs that are just in the world. This means that these characters are actually written for that scene to be there. And what's going to happen to them is done, and that's it.
Right.
And I think that really goes to show the world building they're doing here, and that these characters matter, and that's something you don't see from the other ones. Now, I'm still feeling the burnout, but hopefully by the time that game comes out, I'm way more enthralled and interested in it, because they are establishing characters, or establishing the narrative of these people rather than the narrative of the world going to crap.
Yeah.
And I'm not interested in that story, which The Last of Us, the first one, skipped over that, right? It was about the characters.
Yes.
You didn't really see the entire world go to crap or anything like that. You see that. And I hope in the sequel they follow that same kind of idea.
Yeah, I don't want to talk too much more about The Last of Us 2 because we have so much to talk about, but there's something to be said about having a post-apocalyptic game now that is just regular people out there, like trying to survive. There's like there are the clickers and the zombies and things. We didn't see that in this trailer, and you don't need that necessarily to have something very, very compelling.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we got.
Pulse of E3 is there's too many zombies, and they knew it, and they just felt like we don't need to show you that.
Well,
you may know it's in there, but yeah.
We may have to talk about zombies again very soon.
Now, next up is Ghosts of Tsushima. Now, this game looks really cool. It's from the folks at Sucker Punch, and previously they made a game called...
They made a game called Infamous Second Son,
Yes.
I believe was what they had done last.
Actually, all the Infamous games, really, not just Second Son.
And
but
they'd been gone pretty quiet, radio silent for a little while, and people were wondering for a bit what they were working on. Now, a trailer for this game had come out a few months ago, I believe.
Yeah, at another PlayStation event.
Yeah. And like it looked fantastic. We'd seen it. We were really impressed. Not that much was being spoken about it until just recently.
Yeah. So what we saw here was... I mean, it was incredible. If this was the only game that Sony showed for the entire conference, I would have been well impressed. Beautiful graphics, imaginative design, and beautiful colors. You could really feel the world was alive while you're looking at this. There's this one part, and I'm going to compare this against Ubisoft. Ubisoft showed Assassin's Creed over at their conference, and there's this part where this character is riding on a horse up some mountains. And in this game, there was less people around, and this character was riding on a horse through some mountains and through a field, and the swell of music, the wind blowing the grass, and these animals just running around everything and flying around, it really made you feel like there was something there, like this was a much more expansive feel. And I honestly just couldn't really believe that we hadn't really been hearing a lot about this game up until this moment. It looks, frankly, amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm shocked.
I feel like everyone at the same time was like, okay, we need to talk about this game. We need to learn more about this game, right? So, from what we'd seen, there were these massive vistas, right? And just detail. Every sort of frame was like a painting.
Yeah.
And it was really impressive to see just how many of those minute details there were in the footage that we'd seen. There was the sword fight that breaks out a little bit later in the trailer.
Yeah.
And then we actually saw those Japanese maple leaves.
And you can see the path they would cut through the way. Like, I mean,
single
it was just,
leaves being kicked up.
It just looks so good. And another thing, too, is I know that we're talking a lot about the visual representation of this, but afterwards the developers got to speak a little bit about it, and they mentioned that the sword play is all about precision and not about combos or any of that stuff. It's about the quickest, fastest way to take somebody out, and they were showing a little bit of that gameplay within it, so there seems to be a couple of elements of sneaking around, really fast gameplay, precision
we saw
hits.
grappling too.
Yeah. So it looks like they're putting in a lot of elements in here for a little bit of exploration, which is something that Sucker Punch is very familiar with.
Oh, yes.
And it really looks like there's this real focused take on making the world feel just strong and vibrant. And that's something that's so awesome because I feel that with a lot of these games, there's this take where they're trying to create another world in the game world itself, and sometimes they lose the realism of it. But here, it just felt one-to-one. Like, it felt like you were just looking at a motion movie. Like, it was really crazy.
So, Sucker Punch had made a lot of games that had, like, gigantic cities in the past, right, with Infamous. So I'm kind of wondering, we've seen some kind of intimate sort of locations besides, like, a sprawling field so far. I'm kind of wondering how they're going to tackle the kind of bigger towns in this game, because they seem pretty good at.
If anything, if everything I know about the developer holds true, they've already really mastered that hold of a city. They know how that city should breathe and move, and how people should be walking around in it. So I expect to see very much the same thing. That they understand that already, and
it seems like there's a lot of ways to traverse the city and stuff. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it seems very cool. We got to see more. I want to see more.
I do.
I want to get my hands on this game. After that, we saw another game that, again, like continuously, game after game, we're like, oh, wow, that was really awesome.
Yes.
And then we lean in again. Oh, wow, that was really awesome. And then we lean in again. Like every single game, Sony didn't show off as much as some of the other conferences that we've seen.
Yeah. It was funny because you would expect them to be weighted down, but they only showed a handful of games. But every single game they showed was a knockout.
Absolutely. So then the next game that we had seen was something that we hadn't heard anything about.
Yeah. So I'm a big fan of Remedy. I've been following Remedy ever since Max Payne. And Quantum Break was the game I actually liked quite a bit, but there's elements of it that seem to be a little bit weighted down. But regardless, that was their previous entry. Now we're talking about Control. Now, this is funny because I honestly thought Remedy would be making their next game with Sony, so it was with Microsoft. So it's kind of interesting to see it on a Sony platform.
Quantum Break was only on PC and on
Xbox
One.
Yes. So what we saw here looks to be kind of a really atmospheric, visual, strange game.
MC Escher.
Yes, okay, that's a very good aspect.
First thing that popped into my head, I was like, this is like MC Escher, the game, you know?
Yeah.
And even the gun that the woman was holding was continuously morphing and had these like voxely sort of like charcoal blocks.
Cubism, you had like rotation. It almost felt like something you would see from kind of like Portal almost, in the way that it felt like it was in a factory or a science lab or something like that. There seemed to be experiments running in there, and there were other people in that area. So I'm really curious to see what this is going to be. Clearly, it's heavily sci-fi focused. And, I called Remedy while we were watching. I was like, this is Remedy. And the reason it was because the way that Remedy handles slow motion, they do it in such a very specific way because they are the masters of it. In the same way that the folks at id are really good at gunplay, Remedy is fantastic at managing their special features and special effects and stuff like that. There's this very like signature way that they manage that stuff. And I was seeing that while we were watching the video. So I felt that there was a lot there to look at. We don't really know what the gameplay is going to be about. Visually, it's impressive. That's all we can really say.
Yeah, it kind of feels like they took some, they learned some things while they were making Quantum Break, and then they took a lot of what they've learned in the past, and they're kind of placing it into Control.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's exciting. Next up was another.
Yeah. Wow. We didn't expect this to happen, all right? Like, you and I were sitting there.
Not so soon.
You know what? I didn't even think this was ever going to be announced.
Yeah.
Like, I'm being honest. I was just like, I just thought, well, you know what? They're doing.
Capcom had said that they were taking steps in this direction with this game.
Well, because I've already seen Resident Evil 7, like the new first person mode, and I thought, well, you know what? They saw a clear success with that. That's the direction they're going to take. But then they showed off a remake of Resident Evil 2.
Yep.
And folks, look, you know me. I'm not a big Resident Evil player. I've never really played all the games, but that one looked good.
I shouted.
Yeah. The graphics were so detailed. The animations, the voice acting, everything was completely on point. I was shocked to see that, honestly.
So we did get the original Resident Evil remake recently, just within the past few years, and that kind of felt like they were just taking the GameCube game, which was a fantastic remake of the original, very good, and just kind of pumping it up a little bit, right? It didn't feel like they had to put all that much work into it, though I understand there is some. Resident Evil 2 is a from the ground up, like absolute facelift, absolute remake. The attention to detail, especially in the first portions of what we saw, was very impressive. For a moment, we thought it was Death Stranding.
Yeah. Like we couldn't tell because it just had this real different visual style to it. Now I'll say this: if you're a fan of the older Resident Evil games, you know that there's sort of this cheesy aspect to it that kind of makes the edge of the horror and the violence a little bit easier to take because they're playing it more like a B movie. What we saw here felt like they are trying to remove that B-movie aspect and give it more of a serious horror vibe, which I think some fans are going to really be into. But at the same time, I can feel some older fans there that might just be like, you know what? I like those cheesy sequences about Jill sandwiches and
Yes,
stuff.
I was going to bring that up.
Yeah, and I don't know, from what I saw there, that looks like it's going to be far more determined in a more of a darker feel.
Yeah, it could be, but Capcom has fun with their games,
Yeah.
so we'll see what happens there. The one question that I have, though, is one that I had raised earlier. Claire and Leon, we know they're both in the game. Is it going to be the same approach that they took to the original release of Resident Evil 2, where you could play through the campaign once as Leon and once as Claire and kind of unravel things from both characters' perspectives? Or is there going to be some different way of jumping between the two characters? Like, are they going to take the same approach? Or are they going to do something a little different this time?
It's a really interesting take because the original Resident Evil really did have, or Resident Evil 2, you had one disc on the PlayStation that would be for Leon, and the other one was for
Claire.
And when you look at that on the N64, it was all on one cartridge, which was crazy for its time. But what we're seeing here, I mean, you could be onto something where it's kind of like a traversal where you're playing as Leon for one part, and then it just goes, okay, now we're talking about Claire, and it jumps over to that side.
I'm wondering because it doesn't seem like because they have been talking about this remake, but it doesn't seem like they've been developing it for that long, and it's coming in 2019.
Yeah, that's what they said.
January of 2019, I believe.
I think that's what. Yeah. It was sometime in the year. What got me interested though too is now that they're officially going, okay, we're going to do Resident Evil 2. Are you going to do 3 now? Like, where do you stop? Do you remake 4? See, like,
well, 4 is one of those games where I feel like they could just kind of continuously bump up the textures a little bit, and people would be okay with that.
We have the Resident Evil.
We did just get the Resident Evil 4 remake for the PS4.
But it's just higher definition textures and stuff like that. Resident Evil 3 is one of those games that people rarely ever talk about now, and 2 really is that iconic entry into the franchise that so many people love.
Oh yeah.
I mean, there are a whole bunch of things they could do with this, and from what I can see here, and while we were watching it, people freaked out, and everyone in the audience was just erupting in like just and you too, everyone was. So I think this is like a big deal. Yeah.
Okay, next up is a game that I dug into a little bit. And I really liked. It was in the same vein as the Soul series and Bloodborne. It's Neo is getting a sequel.
Yes. I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting this either, because Neo just came out. Well, I don't know. Time goes by so quick now.
It was quick, though.
Yeah,
it wasn't that long ago.
Neo didn't come out too long ago, and it was a very short tease. There's not that much to talk about. I didn't think it was Neo. You called it. You said it was Neo.
No, because it looked exactly like. They're not going to make a Neo 2 this quick, and they totally did.
Yeah, because it said Team Ninja, right? So there's only a few games recently that come to mind that they could be working on, unless it was a new IP.
I first said, to be fair, the first thing I said was Ninja Gaiden, and then when I was seeing that, I was like, well, before it's Ninja Gaiden, I was like, could it be beach volleyball? I was like, no, it's not going to be that. Because that would look really weird. But yeah, then I said Neo 2 because I was like, is it going to be Neo 2? And it totally was.
I didn't think it was, but
we didn't really see enough of this. It was just basically a pre-rendered video just to basically have a statement of being that we are doing this. So we don't know. This could be released whenever. But what we saw there,
it's still the Shogun style of the first Neo. We saw some sort of demonic being coming to life, and it was very grand.
Yeah.
But that's about it. It was short and sweet. So
just to know that a sequel's coming out is pretty exciting, and I think if you actually miss playing the first Neo and you are a fan of like the Souls-like games, I heavily recommend you try Neo. It, especially on the PlayStation 4 Pro, you can play it at a higher higher frame rate and a higher resolution.
Yes.
Personally, though, if you've ever played one of those games, a higher frame rate, a little bit better.
It's much better.
I think that's a really neat game to try, especially if you like those franchises.
Okay. Do you like superheroes, Shane?
I do.
Do you like web slinging through cities, Shane?
I do very much.
Did you like Spider-Man 2?
I didn't play
Not the movie.
Okay,
well, no. The first movie was okay. The Amazing Spider-Man 2, not so much. Dude, there's a Spider-Man game.
I rewatched all the Spider-Man movies recently, and to be fair, I've only liked the latest one more than the other ones. They never really seem to live up to what they were trying to be. But you know what? That's movie, Shane, and you're not watching that for this. What you're watching is a show about video games, and folks, let me tell you, that Spider-Man game, oh, wow. Holy! Everything they showed there. Now, we've already seen the web slinging action going between buildings and buildings. We've already saw a lot of that from the last conference that Sony had. But what I saw here in the gameplay portions, you were seeing really fluid combat mechanics with a whole bunch of abilities. Spider-Man was running up the walls at points, and he really felt like he was bound by what was around him to swing from one place to another. And then they introduced I'm not going to call them the Sinister Five because they didn't show all the Sinister group there, but they did show Scorpion, they showed Vulture, they showed
Electro.
We thought it was Shock, but I think you're right. It definitely looks like Electro.
Yeah, the Shocker. It's Electro.
Yeah. And then they showed off
Negative. Is it Negative?
I think it's Negative Man. We've already seen him in the prior ones, and there was also a Rhino.
Oh yeah, I forgot about him.
Yeah. So they were showing off that there's these other villains that are going to be in it. Now, I hope this was at the beginning of the game because that means that these characters are going to go out into the city and you have to basically capture each one and bring them back. And you know what? I like that kind of mechanic because I want to explore the world and I want to see these characters trying to be what they are. At the end of the day, all they really are just villains that steal money from banks. I mean, that's essentially what the Spider-Man villains are. That's always been that way. But what's interesting about Negative Man, I don't know really much about him, but I don't want to read into it because I want to explore this new character because for me, I've never seen this character. This is a new villain and they could have gone the easy route with like going, oh, we're going to do Mysterio or we're going to do the Hobgoblin, but at least they're doing an actual villain that we're not very familiar with, so it's going to be way more interesting to see. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, you had mentioned traversal and going out and finding all these guys, and it looks like traversal, like we knew this, right? It's smooth as butter, and the great thing about this game that you didn't see in a lot of other Spider-Man games is your web goes where the buildings are and it attaches like fairly logically. I also really like, as far as what the whole web thing is concerned, Spider-Man seems to have fun doing what he's doing, right? You're not just, okay, yeah, you're web slinging and stuff and fighting enemies, but like, he's having a blast doing what he's doing, and that almost translates onto the player.
Yes, and that really is Spider-Man because Spider-Man's a fast-talking, fast-moving person.
Always cracking jokes as he's beating down criminals and stuff.
And see, I always felt like a lot of the other games that have tried to do Spider-Man have always kind of missed that. And with this one, we were seeing a lot of that action, a lot of that fluidity, and a lot of that kind of fast, quick thinking stuff.
They showed off something I especially liked in their gameplay demo was a tripwire, right? That you just put on the back of someone, and then two people sandwiched together, you put it on a wall or something. It looks like Peter Parker's going to go beyond just his typical web stuff and have like other little cool inventions and things.
And I honestly think that's really cool. What I saw there looked so engrossing, looked so awesome. And everything we've talked about so far, aside from Resident Evil 2, because we know that that's going to come out not only to the PlayStation platform, but Xbox and PC as well. Many of the other games there, these might just be specifically being released on the PlayStation platform and nothing else, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to, let's just look at this, Last of Us 2, we know that's going to be Sony exclusive. Ghost of Tsushima, that's going to be Sony exclusive.
Control, I believe. I don't know.
We didn't really find out enough about that.
Yeah, that's true, because Control, the team did work with Microsoft for
so we might see that happen on other systems, but they showed off a lot. But we do know that Sony is at least getting Spider-Man and Neo exclusively to them. At least the first Neo was. Maybe Neo 2.
So we're just assuming.
Yeah. But Spider-Man definitely is going to be exclusive because, they kind of have the rights to the whole Sony Spider-Man franchise for the movies.
That's movie Shane, though.
Yeah, that's movie Shane. Back to home, because the last game that we saw there...
This is an exclusive as well,
This is an exclusive, and I'm really, really excited to play this. Death Stranding. Now, I'm a fan of Hideo Kojima. I've played a lot of his games. Just recently, we actually did... Oh, yeah. I got the whole...
You're representing today,
Foxhound logo on me today. You guys may have seen one of our previous videos we did on the Re-Res Prime channel where we talked about Police Knots. I'm just a huge follower of his work. So Death Stranding is the latest entry. Now, for those of you that don't know, Kojima got into some kind of battle with Konami and eventually left the company. And that's where he was producing all of his games up until that point.
Right.
This is one of the reasons why the last Metal Gear game that got released, not Survival, or whatever that stupid one was, the one prior to that.
Metal Gear 5.
Yeah, Metal Gear 5. Metal Gear 5 didn't feel completed. It felt like it was broken, it was missing elements, and it didn't feel like a cohesive experience. But what was there was genius, and it felt really, really good. Unfortunately, though, it was just a half-finished experience and didn't really come together.
That's true.
But Death Stranding is now Kojima running his own company. His entire team is his. He doesn't have time limits as far as we're aware.
It's no holds barred. It's like they just said, okay, here's a canvas, go.
Yeah, and this is it. This is what he's come up with. Now,
it is weird.
Oh, yeah. So we saw one gun at one point. I don't remember it being fired or anything like that.
Right. It just takes it out.
Yeah. But normally when you see these kind of conferences, what they want to do is show you a lot of gameplay. And what Kojima did was he just showed you guys walking around.
He basically he told us a little bit. We finally know the tiniest little nugget of like what this game is kind of sort of about. Maybe not even about, but what you do in the game. Norman Reedus, the main character of the game, we don't know his name yet, eh?
No, I don't think we do.
He basically just says, "Look, I'm a courier."
So he moves things.
He moves things. And it sounds like the most boring, but no. We watch this character delivering different packages, using different tools, moving through water, across vistas, and interacting with the landscape, moving what could be bodies, and more questions start popping up, right?
There's definitely something there. They're showing that there is some kind of force out in the wilderness, some kind of something messing with nature.
And we're learning about that too.
You could see plants growing really fast and then dying on the grounds. You could see that when a raindrop touched his skin aged drastically. You could see that there was a character that was introduced very briefly. And what's funny is all of these characters, their faces are familiar because they're all popular actors and actresses. Right. They all seem to be people that you would see in movies. And what was interesting about this was they were introducing some kind of concept of these nameless entities that exist there that fast forward things that they touch.
Yes.
So basically, what that means is that there's a villain out there that once it touches you, you just age, I guess, and die.
Right.
Like that's what the concept is.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. You said the rain actually caused him to age.
Just one point. You just see a single drop on his hand, and that part of his hand just kind of ages a little.
I'm wondering if it's the world that does this, or if there's another world like that's kind of connected. These are the questions that, like, you know, hopefully inevitably we get answered when the game is released. But for now, there's this big shroud of like just unknowledge.
Yeah.
That Kojima's made.
And I think a lot of people, when they first saw this game, when they first saw the first trailer being shown off quite a while ago, they saw like, there's like war machines, and there was Mads Mikkelsen.
Mads Mikkelsen. Yeah.
You see him, and he's got like soldiers that are like skeletons, and they've got like guns. So we thought there was going to be some kind of war play or some kind of gunplay going on, which is typical for Kojima in his previous entries of games, including the Metal Gear Solid series. But with this, we haven't seen any kind of gameplay like that. All we've seen is basically moving stuff around and whatever.
We have seen guns.
Yeah.
People aren't using them. We see it's called Death Stranding. We see strands in the sky. We see these sort of strands connected to these shadowy enemies. But yeah, there's really not much else that we've seen.
Now, I'm going to be honest, okay? What I saw was impressive to me as a fan, but I personally believe other people that watch this are not going to get a lot from this. They would have seen the Spider-Man trailer and the Spider-Man gameplay and would have gotten a lot more visceral entertainment from that because it's something they understand and can comprehend. I don't think the next time we see this game, they can continue showing things that don't have any kind of weight to them because people are just going to stop caring about it. They have to show some gameplay that really grabs people. And this is speaking as a fan.
Yes.
I'm already hooked, okay? Day one, once they announced the name, I knew I was going to go get it. So that's not a big deal for me. But I'm just worried about other gamers not being into this as much because they are not as comfortable with being familiar with the people that make these games and having this kind of attachment knowledge to them. All the game companies we talked about, right? I'm excited about them not only because of their prior work, but because of what we've seen. And I really feel that Kojima is the kind of developer that knows how to make an incredible game, but I really feel we need to see some more of that game to really understand what this gameplay is going to be about.
Yeah, again, he was given just like a blank check almost, right? He was given a canvas and said, just go ahead. We don't like, with these other games, we have other iterations of these games that we can point to and say, oh yeah, you know, I played a Spider-Man game before. I played the other Resident Evil games. We know you know, where things had kind of started and branched out to this point. With Death Stranding, we just know the rest of Kojima's body of work, and he has done some pretty wild stuff. And
some of the best games ever made.
Some of the best games ever made, and that was when he was handcuffed. Yeah. Right?
So now we don't know. We don't know what he's going to be doing.
He's free now.
He's free. And I mean, like,
he's on the loose. Someone stop this man.
Now, all of that taken into consideration, they had, I would say Sony had one of the most powerful lineups of games to show. They only showed things that they seemed to be really excited to show. There was a brief talk about Call of Duty getting 4 map pack expansions that were just older map packs that were coming to the whatever. Call of Duty didn't even seem to play an interest so far, and I don't know if we're even going to see any kind of conversation about that in the future. We saw a couple of other games just briefly sprinkled out, but because they did this conference in the weirdest way possible. Now, Microsoft with the Xbox conference had a whole whole bunch of people jump on, and they sat there, and then they looked at things on a screen. And then they left, and that was it. This time around, they sat people in a church. Then they brought it back to kind of a talkie desk where people were just like talking like it was a news report. And then they brought it back to that room, and then they showed off all the games in a completely different room, a completely different building.
A proper conference room.
Yeah. I don't know if this was the smartest move to do that, because honestly, it felt like the experience was kind of...
Right.
I feel like, yeah, you got a lot of games stuffed into that very small time period, but I feel that the mismanagement of time, it kind of broke the flow.
Right. Because we started off with that big lean in with The Last of Us 2, and then we had this strange sort of like it kind of felt like they were buying time a little bit for a moment there, right? When they were just releasing some little trailers and things between that and the main conference hall itself. But one thing's for sure about the Sony conference is that when it was finished, it went by so quickly because every single thing that they showed off was just like it just grabbed you, right? Like it was almost like a good film where you're like, oh, really? That was like already an hour for the conference.
Exactly. Yeah. This was the kind of thing that I felt very, very, very confused and conflicted about. So they showed off nothing but the best they could possibly show off. But I think that in that presentation of being so quick to show all those things and not really showing anything else, they didn't add some weight, some breathing room, some extra pieces. Typically in these conferences, you want to see a couple games spread out in between that are aimed at specific groups or just tinier experiences, because what they showed you was only full meals. A full meal, a full meal, a full meal, and they didn't show you any snack food.
Right.
And I want to see some snack food once in a while, right?
It's kind of expected to have a montage, like an indie montage in these conferences. And we got that later.
Yeah, kind of.
Like by the time everyone had already turned off the conference.
Yeah, it really felt like when everybody's in a single room and all those people, all that press is there, you want to show them everything right there. But instead, they did it in a very strange way, which I personally think the presentation of what they did was bad. I think that really pulled them back. At this point in time, though, I really feel that they have had one of the strongest presentations in terms of games alone. But in terms of the way they presented things, it almost will make you feel like they didn't present it correctly. But it's just the way that they did it was wrong. What they showed you had more promise there. But with that in mind, what we saw was a lot of stuff for 2019, a lot of stuff for late 2018, but we're not seeing anything past that point. I think this conference, and I think there's a lot of people that would agree with me, we're most likely going to see the announcement of a PlayStation 5 or the next console next year. I believe that 2019's E3 is literally going to be the year that we see something for that next system, because they are showing that what they're giving you here is a lot of stuff that makes you want to get the PlayStation 4 now. But after that, what else? They failed to show that next year. They failed to show what comes out in 2020 or whatever. And I think that is starting to worry a couple people. With Death Stranding, we did not see a date again. And we're really getting to the point where, when's it coming out? When are we going to see anything? We're starting to see these games.
Do we know 100% that it's going to be on the PS4?
See, exactly. We don't know. We always assume it was going to come out on the PlayStation 4, but do we really know that it's going to happen that way? Or do we know if the PlayStation 5 is actually going to be a traditional sequel to a system, or is it just going to be a system that just plays PlayStation 4 games?
Yeah, right. Like a PlayStation 4 Pro.
Yeah, exactly, right? I believe that the next PlayStation system, the PlayStation 5, is going to play PlayStation 4 games at a PlayStation 4 Pro level, if not even better. It's probably going to play those older games better than all the other older systems, but it will have games released for it that run best on that system. Because at this point, with the PlayStation 4 Pro, they've introduced a concept where you can get 4K, you can get 60 frames per second on games typically that you couldn't get that at. So now, you're probably going to see the PlayStation 5 go, okay, no more checkerboarding. Here is true, proper PlayStation 4 titles in 4K at 60 frames per second. And I think that's what the PlayStation 5 is going to be for. And I honestly feel that at the end of this conference, it felt so cut off because there is nothing else. This is a message that next year, you're going to start to see what the future is.
Right. Maybe.
And I think Microsoft is in the same spot,
too. Well, yeah. Microsoft has already said in their last conference that they're taking steps towards that. And there are rumors about the next iteration of Microsoft's console already being codenamed at this point. So
yeah.
Well,
so if you had to rank them so far, of all the conferences we've seen, where would you put the Sony one in your own personal opinion?
You saw my reaction during most of this conference. I was just like, mouth agape the whole time. So yeah, the Sony conference has dwarfed the other ones in my opinion, but Nintendo's coming.
Yep. Nintendo's going to be coming up right around the corner. And we're going to be talking about Nintendo tomorrow. Hopefully we can get it out as quick as we can. But one thing I want you guys to pay attention to is that when Nintendo does their press conference, one of the things they're going to do is they're going to present it entirely in a pre-recorded format, which is something that the other companies haven't done. But I think after this year, it's becoming clear that that might be the way to go for the future. Because Devolver Digital had one of the best presentations.
If you haven't seen Devolver Digital's presentation,
you have to.
Well, let's just end it with that, okay?
Yeah.
When you finish watching this, go check out the
Devolver Digital press conference for 2018. Yeah, it's really good. And folks, if Sony's anything to go by, I think tomorrow we're going to have a lot of interesting things to see from Nintendo.